Captain Lee Hyun-woo gripped the metal railing of the bridge as warning alarms blared throughout the UES Resilience. Red emergency lights bathed the command center in an ominous glow. Through the massive viewport, he could see them approaching, like a swarm of metallic locusts against the star-filled darkness of space. The Vorthak fleet stretched across the horizon, their biomechanical ships pulsing with an eerie green light. Each vessel looked like a nightmare fusion of insect and machine, with segmented hulls that seemed to breathe and weapon pods that twitched like living appendages. The largest ship at the center of the formation was easily 3 times the size of Earth's biggest battlecruiser. "Captain, we're detecting over 200 enemy vessels," reported Tactical Officer Nam Jin-soo, his voice tight with barely controlled fear. "Their energy signatures are off the charts. These things are massive." Hyun-woo had been fighting in space for 23 years, ever since humanity first ventured beyond the solar system and discovered they weren't alone. He'd seen plasma burns that could melt through titanium hull plating in seconds. He'd watched good soldiers die in the cold vacuum of space, their last breaths fogging up helmet visors. But he'd never seen anything like this. The bridge crew worked frantically at their stations. Engineer Lee Min-ho was rerouting power to the shield generators while navigator Kang Yun-ji plotted emergency escape routes. Everyone knew the odds. The Vorthak had wiped out the colonies on Kepler 442b in less than 6 hours. The mining stations in the Tau Ceti system had simply vanished, leaving behind only debris fields and distress beacons. "Sir, we're receiving reports from the orbital defense platforms," Communications Officer Park Ji-hai called out, her face pale as she listened to the incoming transmissions. "Station Omega-7 is reporting structural damage just from the gravitational pull of those ships. They're massive beyond anything we've encountered." Through the viewport, Hyun-woo watched as smaller Vortex scout ships detached from the main fleet, like parasites leaving a host. They moved with an unsettling organic fluidity, their hulls rippling as internal biomechanisms adjusted to the changing environment. These weren't just machines of war, they were living weapons. "All stations, battle stations," Hyun-woo commanded, his voice carrying across the ship's intercom system. "This is not a drill. We are facing a hostile alien force. All personnel to combat positions." The Resilience had been humanity's flagship for 5 years, a testament to human engineering and determination. Her hull was scarred from dozens of battles against pirates and hostile alien species, but she'd never faced anything like the Vorthak Empire. The ship's crew of 800 souls represented the best of humanity's space forces. "Captain, incoming transmission from the Vorthak flagship," Ji-hai reported, her fingers dancing across the holographic interface that projected communication frequencies in brilliant blue light. "Put it through," Hyun-woo ordered, straightening his uniform jacket. Whatever happened next, he would face it with dignity. The main screen flickered with static before resolving into a horrifying image. The Vorthak War Commander appeared on screen, its insectoid features both alien and terrifyingly intelligent. Multiple eyes glowed with malevolent yellow light, while chitinous plates covered what might have been a face. When it spoke, its mandibles clicked and scraped together, producing sounds that the universal translator struggled to process. "Humans of Earth," the creature's voice buzzed through the speakers like angry wasps. "Your species has been marked for absorption into our empire. We have consumed the genetic material of 17 civilizations. Your biological and technological distinctiveness will be added to our collective. Surrender now, and your deaths will be swift." The bridge fell silent, except for the hum of life, support systems, and the distant rumble of the ship's massive engines. Every crew member turned to look at their captain, waiting for his response. Some were young officers on their first deep space assignment. Others were veterans who had served alongside Hyun-woo for years. He stepped forward, his weathered face showing no trace of the fear that twisted in his stomach. At 52, he'd earned every line and scar through decades of protecting humanity's expansion into the galaxy. His dark eyes held the steady gaze of a man who had made peace with mortality long ago. "This is Captain Lee Hyun-woo of the United Earth Defense Force," he replied, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had never backed down from a fight. "We've heard about your absorption process from the survivors of your other conquests. We've seen the footage from the research stations you destroyed. We decline your generous offer. The Vorthak commander's mandibles clicked in what might have been amusement or irritation. Behind the creature, Hyun-woo could see the bridge of the alien ship, filled with biomechanical interfaces that pulsed with organic rhythms. Other Vorthak warriors moved about their duties, their chitinous forms adapted for life in the void between stars. Your primitive weapons cannot harm our bioships, human. We have studied your technology through our previous conquests. Your kinetic projectiles, your plasma cannons, your nuclear warheads, all inadequate against our adaptive hulls. You have nothing we fear. Hyun-woo allowed himself a small smile, the kind that had unnerved enemies and reassured allies throughout his career. Then you haven't been studying hard enough, he replied, reaching forward to cut the transmission. As the screen went dark, the bridge erupted into controlled chaos as the crew prepared for the battle of their lives. 3 days before the Vorthak fleet arrived at Earth, Dr. Kim So-young was hunched over her workstation in the depths of the Seoul Underground Research Complex. The facility stretched 15 levels beneath the bustling city above, its reinforced walls protecting some of humanity's most classified xenobiology research. The air hummed with the constant whir of quantum processors and the subtle vibration of massive air filtration systems. So-young had been working for 36 hours straight, surviving on nothing but coffee and determination. Her dark hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail, and her lab coat was stained with chemical markers from the various alien samples she'd been analyzing. The bags under her eyes told the story of countless sleepless nights spent trying to unlock the secrets of humanity's enemies. The laboratory around her looked like something from a science fiction movie, with floating holographic displays showing complex molecular structures and DNA sequences that spiraled through the air like glowing ribbons. Banks of supercomputers lined the walls, their cooling systems creating a constant background hiss that most researchers had learned to ignore. Years ago, on her main workstation, pieces of Vorthak biomechanical technology sat in containment fields, humming with residual energy. These samples had been recovered from battle debris after the aliens' assault on the Proxima Centauri colonies. Each fragment told a story of horror, organic tissue fused with advanced machinery in ways that defied human understanding of biology and engineering. The breakthrough came when So-young was examining what appeared to be a piece of Vorthak ship hull under the quantum microscope. The tissue sample showed signs of neural pathways that extended beyond the organic components and into the metallic structures themselves. It was like looking at a brain that had grown through and around a computer circuit board. "Taemin, you need to see this right now," she called across the lab to her research partner, Dr. Choi Taemin, who was analyzing alien DNA sequences at his own workstation. Her voice carried an urgency that made him immediately abandon his current analysis. Taemin jogged over, his footsteps echoing in the sterile environment. At 35, he was one of the youngest scientists ever to receive clearance for the xenobiology project, but his expertise in quantum biology had proven invaluable in understanding alien life forms that operated on principles human science was only beginning to grasp. "What am I looking at?" he asked, leaning over her shoulder to study the holographic display that showed the Vorthak tissue sample magnified 10,000 times. So-young pointed at the swirling patterns of neural activity that pulsed through both organic and mechanical components. "Look at these neural pathways. They're not just connecting to the machinery, they're quantum entangled with it. The Vorthak bioships aren't just piloted by their crews. The pilots are literally part of the ship's nervous system." The implications hit Taemin like a physical blow. He'd studied the reports from the Proxima Centauri survivors, descriptions of Vorthak ships that seemed to anticipate human tactics before the humans had even decided on them. Ships that adapted their defenses in real time, as if they were thinking creatures rather than mechanical constructs. "That's how they respond so quickly to our weapons," he breathed, his eyes wide with understanding. "The ship and pilot share the same consciousness. They're not operating machinery, they are the machinery." So-young nodded, her excitement growing as she pulled up more data streams. "But look at this frequency pattern in the quantum field. The entanglement is maintained by a very specific resonance between the organic neural tissue and the ship's biomechanical systems. It's like a radio signal connecting two parts of the same brain." She manipulated the holographic display, showing wave patterns that looked like complex music made visible. The quantum entanglement manifested as synchronized pulses of energy that flowed between the organic and mechanical components at precise intervals. "If we could disrupt that resonance pattern," Taemin said, his scientific mind already racing through the possibilities, "we could theoretically sever the connection between pilot and ship." "Exactly," So-Young replied, pulling up a new set of calculations that she'd been working on throughout the night. "I've been modeling a counter-resonance frequency that could interfere with their quantum entanglement, but the power requirements would be enormous, and we'd need to get the device close enough to their command ship to achieve the necessary field strength." The laboratory's emergency communication system suddenly crackled to life, filling the underground facility with the voice of Director General Park Sung-ho. "All research personnel, this is Priority Alpha. Long-range sensors have detected Vorthak scout ships at the edge of the solar system. Estimated time to Earth arrival is 72 hours. All projects are now focused on immediate defense applications." So-Young and Taemin exchanged glances, both understanding that their theoretical breakthrough had just become humanity's only hope for survival. The samples they'd been studying for months in the safety of their underground laboratory were about to become the key to the greatest battle in human history. "We need to contact the Defense Force immediately," Taemin said, already moving toward the secure communication terminal. "Captain Hyun-woo needs to know about this." As alarms began to sound throughout the facility, So-Young stared at the alien. Tissue samples that pulsed with malevolent life, even in their containment fields. Somewhere in the darkness of space, an entire fleet of ships powered by this same horrifying fusion of biology and technology was heading toward Earth. But for the first time since the Vorthak threat had emerged, humanity had found a potential weakness in their seemingly unstoppable enemies. The race against time had begun. The battle for Earth's orbital stations erupted in a symphony of destruction that lit up the darkness of space like a deadly fireworks display. Plasma bolts streaked across the void in brilliant blues and greens, while the thunder of exploding ships created shockwaves that rattled every vessel within 100 kilometers. The Vorthak bioships moved through the carnage like predators hunting prey, their organic hulls pulsing with bioluminescent patterns that seemed to mock humanity's desperate defense. Captain Hyun-woo stood on the bridge of the Resilience, his knuckles white as he gripped the command console. Through the viewport, he watched as orbital defense platform Sigma-9 disappeared in a ball of fire, its crew of 300 souls vaporized in an instant. The Vorthak ships had torn through the outer defense grid like it was made of paper, their adaptive weapon systems countering every defensive measure humanity had prepared. "Sir, we're losing ships faster than we can count them," reported Tactical Officer Nam Jin-soo, his voice cracking with stress. "The Yamato just took a direct hit to her engine core. She's breaking apart." The massive Japanese battlecruiser that had served as humanity's second-largest warship was indeed splitting in half, her titanium hull glowing cherry red as internal explosions tore her apart from within. Escape pods scattered from the dying vessel like seeds from a burning flower, each one carrying precious human lives away from the inferno. But Hyun-woo's attention was focused on the tactical display showing the positioning of the Vorthak fleet. The alien ships were advancing in a predatory formation, their biomechanical hulls rippling with what looked like excitement. Each vessel was easily 3 times larger than humanity's biggest warships, their segmented bodies bristling with weapon pods that tracked human ships with unnervous precision. "All ships, fall back to formation Delta 7, Hyun-woo commanded into his comm unit, his voice carrying across the fleet frequency to every surviving human vessel. "Repeat, all ships fall back to formation Delta 7. Make them think we're retreating." The bridge crew exchanged worried glances. Formation Delta 7 was a full retreat formation, designed to evacuate surviving ships from a hopeless battle. To the untrained eye, it would look like humanity was giving up and running for the outer solar system. Lieutenant Commander Yoon Da-bin's voice crackled through the comm system from her fighter squadron, which was currently engaged in a desperate dogfight with Vorthak interceptors. Her voice was strained as she pulled her fighter through a barrel roll to avoid incoming plasma fire. "Sir, are you ordering us to abandon the outer perimeter? We're leaving the orbital stations defenseless." Darbin had been flying combat missions for 8 years, and her squadron of 20 fighters had already lost half their number to the alien swarm ships. These smaller Vorthak vessels moved like living creatures, their wings actually flapping as they maneuvered through space, defying everything humans understood about physics and aerodynamics. "Trust me, Darbin," Hyunwoo replied, watching the tactical display as human ships began to pull back according to his orders. "We need them to come closer. Draw them toward the inner system." The Vorthak fleet responded exactly as Hyunwoo had hoped. Sensing weakness in the human retreat, they pressed their attack with renewed aggression. The massive bioships surged forward like a tide of living metal, their organic hulls pulsing with bioluminescent patterns that seemed to express predatory satisfaction. What the aliens didn't realize was that the human retreat was carefully calculated. Every ship that fell back was moving according to a precise pattern that would draw the Vorthak fleet into the perfect position for So Young's quantum resonance device to be deployed. Meanwhile, hidden in the debris field of the destroyed orbital, Station Theta 4, a small maintenance shuttle drifted silently among the twisted metal and frozen atmosphere that had once been home to 500 research scientists. The shuttle's hull was scarred and blackened, making it nearly invisible against the backdrop of destruction. Inside the cramped vessel, Dr. Kim So-young hunched over her quantum resonance device, which had been hastily modified for field deployment. The machine hummed with barely contained energy, its crystalline components glowing with an eerie blue light that reflected off her determined face. Banks of quantum processors lined the shuttle's walls, their cooling systems working overtime to prevent the delicate equipment from overheating. Engineer Sergeant Oh Kyung-soo sat at the shuttle's controls, his weathered hands steady on the flight stick despite the chaos erupting around them. At 43, he'd been flying maintenance shuttles through combat zones for 15 years, but he'd never attempted anything as dangerous as what they were planning now. "Easy does it," he murmured to himself as a massive Vorthak bioship passed. Overhead, its segmented hull so close that he could see the neural pathways pulsing beneath its organic armor plating. The alien vessel was easily 2 kilometers long, its surface covered with what looked like breathing pores that opened and closed in a rhythm that suggested the ship was truly alive. So Young's fingers danced across her control interfaces as she fine-tuned the resonance frequency. "The quantum field is stabilizing," she whispered into her comm unit, her voice barely audible over the background hum of her equipment. "I'm detecting the entanglement patterns from at least 50 Vorthak vessels. They're all connected to something much larger." Through the shuttle's viewport, they could see the Vorthak command ship approaching. It was a monstrous thing, easily 5 kilometers long and covered with organic structures that looked like massive organs. Bioluminescent patterns flowed across its surface like a circulatory system made of light, and smaller ships moved in and out of openings along its hull like antibodies responding to an infection. "Target acquired," So Young announced, her voice tight with concentration as she began the final sequence. "Beginning resonance initialization. Kyung-soo, we need to get within 3 kilometers of that command ship for maximum effect." The maintenance shuttle began to move through the debris field with ghostly silence, weaving between chunks of twisted metal and frozen human remains. Around them, the battle raged on as human ships continued their carefully choreographed retreat, drawing the Vorthak fleet deeper into the trap that would determine the fate of Earth itself. The quantum resonance device hummed to life with a sound, like 1,000 tuning forks vibrating in perfect harmony. Dr. Kim So-young's hands trembled as she initiated the final sequence, her finger hovering over the activation switch that would either save humanity or doom them all. The crystalline components of her machine began to glow brighter, casting dancing shadows across the cramped shuttle's interior. "Here we go," she whispered, pressing the switch. The first pulse erupted from the device like an invisible shockwave, spreading outward through the quantum field that connected every Vorthak bioship to its pilot. The effect was immediate and devastating. Across the alien fleet, the organic, neural pathways that had fused pilot consciousness with ship systems began to convulse and spark. On the bridge of the massive Vorthak command ship, War Commander Thexmore was in the middle of coordinating the final assault on Earth's inner defenses. When the disruption hit him like a physical blow, his multiple eyes went wide with shock as the neural interface that connected him to his bioship began to malfunction. The organic conduits that ran from his chitinous skull into the ship's living control systems started to smoke and writhe, like dying snakes. "What is happening?" he shrieked, his mandibles clicking frantically as he tried to maintain his connection to the ship. "Our vessels are losing cohesion. The neural links are failing." Around him, his crew of Vorthak warriors staggered as their own biomechanical interfaces began to short-circuit. The bridge, which had been a symphony of organic and mechanical harmony, suddenly filled with the sounds of systems failing and alien screams of confusion and pain. Throughout the Vorthak fleet, the same chaos was erupting. Bioships that had moved with predatory grace moments before began to drift aimlessly through space, their pilots no longer able to control their movements. The massive vessels, some over 3 kilometers long, started colliding with each other as their navigation systems stuttered and failed. On the bridge of the Resilience, Captain Hyun-woo watched the tactical display with growing amazement as red enemy contacts began to flicker and lose formation. The Vorthak fleet, which had seemed unstoppable just minutes before, was suddenly vulnerable. "Sir, the alien ships are losing formation," reported Tactical Officer Nam Jin-soo, his voice filled with disbelief. "Their energy signatures are fluctuating wildly. Whatever Dr. Kim is doing, it's working." Hyun-woo didn't hesitate. This was the moment they had planned for, the only chance humanity would get to strike back at their seemingly invincible enemies. "Now, all ships target their command vessel. This is our only opportunity." The order spread across the human fleet like wildfire. Ships that had been retreating moments before suddenly reversed course and charged toward the massive Vorthak flagship. The Resilience led the assault, her main plasma cannons charging with a sound like thunder rolling across metal decks. Lieutenant Commander Yoon Da-bin's fighter squadron was the first to reach the enemy flagship. Her remaining 12 fighters dove toward the massive bioship like angry wasps attacking a giant spider. "All fighters, target the organic structures on the hull," she commanded over the squadron frequency. "Those neural pathways look vulnerable, her." Fighters opened fire with everything they had, their plasma cannons and missile systems hammering the Vorthak command ship's biomechanical hull. For the first time in the battle, human weapons were actually causing damage. The alien ship's adaptive defenses, which had previously adjusted to counter every human weapon, were offline and helpless. But inside the maintenance shuttle, Dr. So-young was fighting a desperate battle of her own. The quantum resonance device was overloading, its crystalline components glowing white-hot as they struggled to maintain the disruptive field. Sparks cascaded from the quantum processors lining the shuttle's walls, and the air filled with the acrid smell of burning electronics. "Kyung-soo, we need to get closer to the command ship," So-young shouted over the increasing noise of her failing equipment. "The resonance field is losing coherence at this distance." Engineer Sergeant Oh Kyung-soo gripped the shuttle's controls with white knuckles as the small craft bucked and rolled through space. The quantum field disruption was affecting their own systems as well, causing the shuttle's engines to stutter and its navigation computers to glitch. "I'm trying, but the field is destabilizing our shuttle too." The maintenance craft shuddered as its hull plating began to crack under the stress of the quantum disruption. Warning lights flashed red across the control panel, and the life support systems began to emit ominous grinding sounds. They were literally flying apart at the molecular level as the resonance device tore at the quantum bonds holding their ship together. "There!" So-young pointed through the viewport at the Vorthak command ship, which was now less than 2 kilometers away. The massive alien vessel was clearly in distress, its bioluminescent patterns flickering erratically as its biomechanical systems fought against the quantum interference. "I can see the main neural nexus on the ventral surface. If I can target that directly." Kyung-soo pushed the shuttle's engines beyond their safety limits, ignoring the warning alarms that filled the cabin with their urgent wailing. The small craft accelerated toward the alien flagship, even as pieces of its hull began to peel away like old paint. Through the cracking viewport, they could see human fighters swarming around the massive Vorthak vessel, their weapons finally finding purchase against the aliens' weakened defenses. The quantum resonance device let out a sound like a banshee's wail as So-young pushed it to maximum output. The crystalline core at its center began to fracture, releasing cascades of exotic energy that made the air shimmer like a heat mirage. She knew the machine wouldn't last much longer, but they were so close to the alien command ship now that she could see individual Vorthak warriors moving frantically behind transparent sections of the biomechanical hull. "Just a little closer," she whispered, her finger poised over the final amplification control. "Come on, just a little closer." The shuttle's forward hull section suddenly exploded outward as the quantum field finally overwhelmed its molecular structure. But Kyung-soo kept the dying craft on course toward its target, determined to give So-young the chance she needed to deliver the killing blow to humanity's greatest enemy. Dr. Kim So-young's finger slammed down on the final amplification control as her quantum resonance device reached maximum output. The crystalline core exploded in a burst of exotic energy that turned the shuttle's interior into a light show of crackling electricity and rainbow-colored plasma. The machine screamed like a dying animal as it poured every ounce of power into one final devastating pulse. The quantum shockwave that erupted from the device was invisible to the naked eye, but its effects on the Vorthak command ship were immediate and catastrophic. The massive biomechanical vessel, which had been a perfect fusion of organic and artificial components for centuries, suddenly began tearing itself apart at the molecular level. War Commander Thexmore felt the neural connection to his ship die like a limb being severed from his body. The organic conduits that had linked his consciousness to the vessel's systems withered and blackened, sending waves of agony through his insectoid nervous system. Around him, the bridge crew collapsed as their own biomechanical interfaces failed, leaving them cut off from the ship they had become part of. "Impossible," he whispered, his mandibles clicking in disbelief as he watched his flagship's systems shut down one by one. The bioluminescent patterns that had flowed across the hull like a circulatory system flickered and died. The massive organic engines that had propelled the ship across the galaxy fell silent. Even the life support systems began to fail as the quantum disruption severed the connection between the ship's biological and mechanical components. The 5-kilometer-long command vessel listed helplessly to starboard, its hull cracking as internal pressures shifted without the biomechanical systems to regulate them. Atmosphere vented from dozens of breaches, creating crystalline clouds of frozen air that sparkled in the light of Earth's sun. Throughout the Vorthak fleet, the same catastrophic failure was spreading like a plague. Bioships that had conquered 17 star systems suddenly found themselves powerless, their pilots screaming in agony as neural interfaces burned out. The smaller interceptor craft began to drift aimlessly, their wing-like appendages twitching spasmodically as their nervous systems died. Captain Hyun-woo watched the tactical display with amazement as 200 red enemy contacts suddenly went dark or began displaying erratic movement patterns. The Vorthak fleet, which had seemed unstoppable just minutes before, was now completely helpless. "All ships surround the enemy flagship," he commanded, his voice carrying the authority of a man who had just witnessed the impossible. "Target their weapon systems, but do not destroy them yet." The remaining human vessels moved into position around the crippled Vorthak command ship like predators surrounding wounded prey. The Resilience took point, her plasma cannons trained on the alien vessel's primary weapon clusters. Lieutenant Commander Daebin's fighter squadron swept around the massive ship's perimeter, their weapons locked onto critical systems. Hyun-woo opened a communication channel to the Vorthak flagship, his voice broadcasting across all frequencies. "Commander Thexmore, your fleet is disabled. Your biomechanical systems have been permanently severed. Surrender now and we'll consider allowing you to retreat to whatever hole you crawled out of." On the bridge of the dying command ship, Thexmore struggled to his feet. His chitinous exoskeleton cracked from the neural feedback that had nearly killed him. For the first time in his 300-year military career, he felt something completely alien to his warrior culture: helplessness. The humans had found a way to turn the Vorthak's greatest evolutionary advantage into their most critical weakness. But even as victory seemed within humanity's grasp, the quantum resonance device was claiming its creators. The maintenance shuttle, carrying Dr. So-young and Engineer Sergeant Oh Kyung-soo, had been pushed far beyond its structural limits. The hull was disintegrating molecule by molecule as the quantum field tore at the fundamental bonds holding the craft together. "So Young, we need to get out of here," Kyung-soo shouted over the sound of rending metal and sparking electronics. "The shuttle's breaking apart." So Young looked at her device, which was now glowing so brightly that it hurt to look at directly. The quantum disruption field was stable and would continue to affect the Vorthak fleet for hours, but the machine that had created it was destroying itself and everything around it. "The resonance cascade is self-sustaining now," she said, a sad smile crossing her face. "Even if we shut down the device, the effect will continue." Kyung-soo tried to engage the shuttle's emergency systems, but the quantum field had destabilized everything electronic on the small craft. The engines sputtered and died, the life support systems flickered offline, and even the emergency beacon failed to activate. They were trapped in a disintegrating shuttle with no way to escape. "It's been an honor working with you, So Young," Kyung-soo said quietly, his hands still working the dead controls even though he knew it was hopeless. "The honor was mine," she replied, watching through the cracking viewport as human ships moved in to secure the Vorthak fleet. "At least we know Earth will be safe." The shuttle finally succumbed to the quantum disruption in a brilliant flash of light that briefly outshone the stars themselves. The explosion was visible from every human ship in the vicinity, a beacon of sacrifice that marked the moment two heroes gave everything for their species. Across the solar system, the remaining Vorthak vessels that hadn't been completely disabled began powering up their hyperspace engines. Cut off from their command ship and unable to function as an effective fighting force, they had no choice but to retreat. The biomechanical technology that had made them the terror of the galaxy had become their downfall when humanity found a way to exploit its fundamental weakness. Captain Hyun-woo stood silently on the bridge of the Resilience, watching the Yeo debris field where So Young and Kyung-soo had made their final stand. Around him, his crew was celebrating humanity's first major victory against the Vorthak Empire, but he couldn't shake the image of that brilliant flash of light that had saved them all. "Sir," Communications Officer Park Ji-hai reported, "we're receiving surrender signals from 17 Vorthak vessels. The rest of their fleet is jumping to hyperspace." As the alien ships disappeared into the void between stars, Hyun-woo knew that this battle would be remembered as the turning point in humanity's war for survival. The Vorthak had learned something important about humans that day. When cornered, humans didn't just fight back. They found ways to turn their enemies' greatest strengths into fatal weaknesses. Word of the victory would spread across the galaxy, carried by the retreating Vorthak survivors. Other alien species would learn that despite their primitive technology and small numbers, humans possessed something that couldn't be quantified or conquered: the absolute refusal to give up no matter what the odds. Earth was safe, but more importantly, humanity had proven that they belonged among the stars, not as victims or subjects, but as a force that would never bow to any empire, no matter how powerful or advanced. The end.